Okay, now take a look at this, members of the Altcoin Buzz Army. This is an exact snapshot, and I've done my best to record this with real accuracy 24 hours, exactly 24 hours after the crash yesterday of May 19th. We're on CoinGecko right now. Let's reload for the most accurate numbers. Overall, the market is up 5.9%. Now, you may kind of criticize me and say this is cherry picking. Nobody can buy the exact bottom of a crash to the extent that we saw. And you know what? I agree with you. Actually, I think that's a fair point. It's more of an illustrative point that I'm making right now. Take a look at some of this 24-hour movement. Bitcoin up 32%, Ethereum 36%, Binance Coin 24%, Cardano is up 64%. Dogecoin, we don't really like Dogecoin anymore. Bitcoin Cash and others. I mean, across the board, as far down as the eye can see, everything is up 40, 30, 50%, 60% in some cases. I'm not trying to rub any salt into the wounds here, but I am suggesting in this video that the smart money, you can see, has bought up the dip with a lot of confidence. And we're going to various degrees, put on our tinfoil hats in this video, because I'm of the opinion that certainly there's been coordination in terms of putting the FUD together that we've seen over the course of the last week. That's certain. That's 100%. To what degree it was orchestrated, I think there's some nuance there that we can't say just yet. But we know all the bankers are getting into this space. We're going to be talking about the big press release that conveniently came out yesterday out of Wells Fargo. I covered this in yesterday's video on our second channel, Altcoin Buzz News. If you guys aren't subscribed to this channel, I do suggest you check it out. We took a look at some very suspicious Reddit posts, which we're going to revisit in today's video. But go ahead and subscribe, number one, to that channel and check out the video if you've not already. Today's video here on Altcoin Buzz on the main channel is going to be a little bit of a follow-up with some added context and some added, not only data, but some added opinion and a little bit of editorializing on my part. To begin with, I asked you guys outright whether or not you think we are still in the bull market. And I have to say I was pleasantly surprised because as per this poll we released yesterday, about 21 hours ago, a full, actually more than 3/4 of you believe that the bull market is not over, meaning that there's a little bit of negativity here, like in the wording of the question. But is the bull market over? No, according to more than 3/4 of you suggesting that we are still in this. We still have new all-time highs to set. I mean, take a look at Bitcoin, if nothing else, now flirting just below $42,000. Again, that's up 37, nearly 38% on the day. Many people were kind of suggesting that the zone of resistance would be about 40K. And now that we've, I don't want to say comfortably gone beyond 40K, but we do find ourselves above 40K. So it's going to be interesting to see how this day goes. And that's speaking nothing of the altcoins. Altcoins absolutely capitulated yesterday. We were seeing drawbacks of, in some cases, 60, 70, 80% on the 24 hours. It made no sense. I can only hope, I have two hopes. I hope, number one, that hopefully you guys didn't sell if it was a project that you're confident about, that you were serious about. I hope that just because your altcoin, your favorite altcoin, your project, just because it was dragged down by Bitcoin and the outlandish FUD, we'll get to that in a second, surrounding Bitcoin, just because your altcoin was dragged down by association, I certainly hope you did not sell at a loss. Or maybe you sold a little bit higher and then you bought back in, you increased your bag position. That would be nice. So number one, I hope you didn't sell. You have strong hands, not lettuce hands. I know, given that 3/4 of you feel the bull market isn't over, I know that you have some diamond hands out there, you members of the Altcoin Buzz Army. But number two, my hope is that maybe you also bought the dip a little bit. Not financial advice, but you can clearly see based on the numbers here that those that did buy the dip are profiting already. And that's a day later. That's not a week later, a month later, a year later, 5, 10 years later. That's the next day. In some cases, adding 50% to your position in underlying USD value. For the most part, we don't necessarily care about USD value. I understand that. We care about sats. We care about GUI. Here's another interesting observation. The Bitcoin dominance, as you can see here, is also starting to rise significantly. That's because, number one, we saw a strong bounce by Bitcoin. And number two, in conjunction with the fact, as I just mentioned, these altcoins were capitulating, but they had no reason to for the most part. This was, a confluence of a lot of different vectors, a lot of different FUD attacks rather. And I'm going to suggest basically in this video that I think to a certain degree it was at the very least loosely orchestrated. Perhaps one kind of step of less than that in terms of intensity, in terms of paranoia, is the fact that there were opportunists in the form of institutions, banks that were taking advantage of this. Whether or not they coordinated the whole thing is a matter perhaps of some debate right now. But let's get into all that. So on this subject that, I'm very happy in terms of the responses, by the way, here, but on this subject of whether or not the bull market is over, again, 77% of you feel that no, it is not over. We have new all-time highs that are yet to be set. That seems to be corroborated right now by the data that we're seeing here. We're on cryptoquant.com taking a look. I'm just going to get my face out of the way there for you guys. Taking a look at all of basically the miners and their activity right now. You can see that we're looking at Bitcoin miner outflow. So specifically, were miners selling their Bitcoin on this dip? Very typically, you're going to see a peak at the peak of, for example, the $20,000 mark for Bitcoin in 2017. You're also going to see a corresponding peak in Bitcoin outflow on behalf of the miners because they've been building up their bags, they've been mining, they've been creating this stockpile of reserves that then they want to get rid of at the peak. We're not seeing that. We didn't see that in yesterday's sell-off. And again, I'm not much of a chartist. There's different people talking about this wick-off formation, the head and shoulders formation. Not exactly, despite the fact that I don't place all that much confidence in charts, there's not a lot here that would correspond to a peak formation. There's not a sudden rise and a sudden drop. That sharp and pronounced peak is just not something that we saw. Timing is also another issue. If you go back to the last halving event, we're not really lined up right now to be at the peak of a bull market. So those are different considerations that we can get into to varying degrees, but I want to point out what I feel is a very strong metric here is just the fact that miners aren't selling yet. So what does that suggest? Well, if you go back to this video that I highlighted at the beginning here, we did discuss the fact, and this is kind of getting into the more tinfoil hat, conspiracy level stuff. I can't prove any of this, but I do find it interesting. So I'll read this out. This is posted earlier in the week on Reddit, purportedly. For all I know, this is just a Photoshop that somebody made. It's just LARPing. I don't know. It probably is, in fact. That's what I'll say for the record. It probably is a fabricated LARP, somebody just having fun on Reddit boards. But the spirit of this is, I think, what counts. And I talked about this in yesterday's video. Here's the post. Hey, guys. Insider here. For those of you that are not busy moo bobo LARPing and paying attention, there will be another announcement from China soon. Picture is semi-related, referring to supposedly what happened subsequently with the big news, the big FUD out of China banning cryptocurrency, right? Which has happened a million times, by the way. It's not big news. Can't tell you guys what firm I work for, but it's massive and it's working with the PRC, which I believe is the People's Republic of China. The purpose of today's press release alongside all the FUD posting is to get Bitcoin as low as it can get before 7 a.m. UTC. First, there will be a coordinated sell-off to drop the prices below a certain threshold and liquidate one certain stakeholder. Can't outright say who he is, but he bought a lot at the dip and he was partly responsible for I think you can probably put two and two together and understand who's being referenced there. Once liquidated, the plan is then to buy up all the reserves and essentially leave him bankrupted. If you guys want to get rich, grab some coffee and watch for the big dip. Once it happens, things are going to get green really fast. We project $70,000. This could all be a LARP. This could all be Photoshop nonsense. Chances are you've seen people talking up these threads and highlighting this image on Twitter, urging followers to, hey, retweet this, make sure it goes viral, make sure everybody knows about it. Look, I mean, even if this were 100% true, you cannot trust these message board images. This could be completely fabricated just because it has the timestamp of a date. Okay, that's not independently verified as far as I know right now. So if I were to make a wager, if I were to make a guess today, I'd say this is probably fake, but the spirit of it certainly still exists because we know that even if it's not explicitly coordinated as far as these FUD attacks, right? Elon Musk, China, Binance, and the IRS. And what was the other one? We had some Tether, some USDT FUD. Even if it's not like this cabal of banking elites kind of twirling their mustaches, right, at the long table and explicitly coordinating this, they're still just taking advantage of the opportunity. They're still just taking advantage of the FUD. Case in point here, Wells Fargo with this announcement from yesterday. We covered it in yesterday's video on Altcoin Buzz News. Wells Fargo's Investments Institute is in the final stages of onboarding an active crypto strategy for its wealthy clients. Its president told us why the firm changed its mind on crypto and shared the key merits and risks of the so-called inevitable asset. This is from yesterday. Take a look at the date here, May 19th. So Daryl Kronk, he's the president of Wells Fargo Investment Institute, told Business Insider in an exclusive interview that the investment research division of Wells Fargo Wealth and Investment Management is planning to evaluate and onboard an actively managed cryptocurrency strategy to its platform for qualified investors. Who else has a crypto division that they're starting up? Who else is creating whole new branches of industry devoted to blockchain and distributed ledger technology, and in some case, Bitcoin, Ethereum products, ETPs, for example? I think an ETF is also imminent, by the way. We're not even talking about that anymore, but a Bitcoin ETF, I think, is right around the corner. JP Morgan is one of the answers. Citi is one of the answers, Citibank. We just talked about Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, for example, Merrill Lynch. I don't know if that's confirmed yet on the part of Merrill Lynch, but I wouldn't be surprised. All of these guys are doing this behind the scenes, and this is getting a lot of coverage. Again, this from yesterday, the 19th of May, Wells Fargo to onboard active cryptocurrency strategy for rich clients. Don't forget what New York Dig was talking about just a few weeks ago. This from the 5th of May. NY Dig, Bitcoin is coming to hundreds of US banks this year. This was extremely bullish news when it dropped, and it's like all of a sudden we've just forgotten about it. Like just with the snap of a finger, the sentiment has changed dramatically. Like we've done a 180-degree flip now. We're in this extreme fear environment. I think it's starting to swing back to the upside, but like it's just preposterous to think back to this was the announcement by NY Dig. Bitcoin is coming to hundreds of US banks this year. And so is it possible, and just kind of indulge me for a moment here, but is it possible as we refresh CoinGecko.com that maybe, just perhaps, Bitcoin, as you can see, is continuing to rise? Is it possible that just perhaps all of these different banks, all of these mega international institutions, which, by the way, control and own media companies in the first place, is it possible that at least, if not literally, that in some sense, in some loosely organized sense, they just decided, let's just put out a lot of FUD and let's get some negative messaging that's going to culminate during whatever the second week or the third week, I suppose, of May 2021, because we're ready to make our move. We understand that we have these divisions that are, beginning to be created. They're kind of ready to go right now. We've got to improve our point of entry. And by the way, this is not one website. Everybody is covering this news. BBC.com, Wells Fargo, US bank set to offer crypto fund to rich clients. And similarly on CNBC.com, they're reminding us of this NY Dig announcement. Hundreds of banks are getting into the Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain game. So I can't prove any of this. I can't prove that this was a coordinated FUD attack in terms of that news. Again, Elon Musk, Tesla, which, by the way, I think they're just kowtowing to the environmental groups. Very interestingly, we had that Michael Burry news that came out. He is shorting Tesla stock to the tune of $500 million because he feels, look, Tesla is just basically making their money based on energy offsets revenue that they're selling to other automakers. But all these other automakers are getting into the EV space anyway, electric vehicles. They're no longer going to have a need very soon for those energy offsets, those carbon offsets and carbon credits. And I didn't know this previously to reading about Michael Burry, but that's like Tesla's main bread and butter, which I found fascinating. So as more and more automakers get into the electric vehicle and the renewables space, like Tesla's going to face a lot more competition, and their competitive advantage is going to disappear. It's going to dematerialize very quickly. So I think personally that all that Elon Musk FUD was really just Tesla kind of, not wanting to bite the hand that feeds them, so to speak. That's a matter of some debate, and perhaps should be the subject of another video, but that's kind of my point of view. Anyway, so Tesla FUD, Elon Musk FUD, again, China ban, that's not news. That's been happening literally for years. IRS and Binance, and then finally Tether USDT FUD. All of this, is it possible that it was coordinated? I don't know. It's also possible that it's all just organic because smart money buys the dip anyway. And if we were over leveraged, if the market was overheating and it was due for a correction anyway, look, it's possible. I have to contend that a lot of these banks and a lot of these institutions were just kind of, if not feeding the fire, they were just ready to capitalize here at the time of this dip, which of course was exacerbated by all the leveraged traders. So you just had this cascading effect that got worse and worse and worse, and smart money bought the dip, right? We know Michael Saylor bought the dip. There's no doubt about that. Finally, I want to highlight the other point here, which is to suggest that like we're still not out of the woods, speaking as a North American, but perhaps on behalf of the Americans out there in the altcoin buzz army watching. Whatever happened to this? Whatever happened to inflation, which just a week ago was like the biggest news in the world that, you know, as much as possible, they were trying to downplay. 4.2% for April. You have the cost of commodities, which is just absolutely soaring. We've been covering this previously on the channel. Food, chicken, so poultry, pork, a lot of fish products, coffee is, I mean, like, it's unbelievable some of these prices that we're seeing for everyday items. Forget about like construction materials and other things and precious metals. Not so much gold just yet, although I do think gold's going to do okay. But you look at the price of palladium, for example. Look at the cost of just basics. So lumber, which is, you know, quadrupled, quintupled over the course of the last year. Steel, things like cobalt, any kind of building material right now is very, very difficult to acquire because of supply chain shocks. And then that feeds back into the price as well. The price is much, much higher than it has to be. So it's, well, not that it has to be, but you understand my point. So you kind of go back to this point that like, I do think that the powers that be, the institutions out there, they're not stupid. If they didn't outright coordinate all this, they certainly took advantage of it. But there you go. Lesson in point, in my opinion, non-financial advice, is that you do buy the dip. And when there's a confirmation of what is viewed to be the dip, so to speak, what people kind of collectively agree to be, agree is the bottom, look, you make money by buying red. You do not make money by buying green. And it's a kind of a contrarian sort of thing that's difficult to do sometimes, difficult to execute. But there you have it. I'd be very curious to know what you all think about these developments, what you all think about Wells Fargo and these other banks. Do you think that they were behind this? Do you think there's any legitimacy to these Reddit posts that are kind of being surfaced now? Or is this all just LARPing? I don't know. I can't say for certain. I think at the very least, again, opportunists out there took advantage. They capitalized on the dip. That's what smart money does. So I just wanted to present a whole bunch of information. Hopefully this is not too out there in the world of conspiracy, but I do find it interesting. We're going to have some more videos coming shortly, later this afternoon for you guys. But in the meantime, keep following us on all the regular social media channels. Keep checking back into altcoinbuzz.io for all the latest. Like, subscribe, share, of course, to receive notifications. Hit the bell as well. And look, none of this is financial advice. I think you guys know that already. However, I do wish you all the very best of luck if you do choose to invest. Stay safe on this Thursday, members of the Altcoin Buzz Army. I hope you profited. I hope you increased your positions and have done well, or at the very least, you've been safe during this flash crash, which has been a tremendous one. If you're new to this space, don't be too discouraged. In my humble opinion, as well as in your opinion, for the most part, you viewers, the bull market will continue. So look on the bright side, find the silver linings. There are opportunities that exist in every crisis. With that being said, again, good luck. Hope to see you again soon in our next video. Take care.